All right. Hey, Rob, what's up?
Hey, Mike, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah. How about you?
Good. I
How's
could use a
Northern?
haircut
What's
and a
that?
pizza. I could use a haircut and a pizza.
A pizza? Yeah, I got my hair cut, as you can tell.
Looks good.
My wife did a lovely job. So, I don't think I told you about there was a unspoken battle going on in our house that I don't even think, I think I'm the only one who knew about it. But my wife and daughter were complaining about my beard, right? And it was because it was getting pretty bad.
Yeah.
But then I had at the same time was asking one of them to cut my hair, which is a very easy process. All I wanted was the clippers that we already have set to number 3 or something like that, and just do that, cut it, and cut it and be done. 5 minutes. But no, somehow everybody's too busy when we're all home. And I have to be fair because my wife is working, but there's still a lot of time in the day. So I was just like, you know what? I'm not trimming my beard at all until my hair gets cut. Because at some point, the crazy, insane, which I think is what I look like in the last podcast, if you watch the video. Um, so finally, my wife cut my hair, and then I trimmed the beard down a little bit. Although they still want me to cut the beard completely off. I don't know. I like it.
Keep it.
Oh, I'm planning on it. So anyway, that's my haircut story. My wife finally agreed to cut my hair. Actually, she was gone somewhere, and I set everything up out on the porch. The clippers, the chair, everything. And then so I didn't give her much choice. But anyway.
Nice. Well done.
So, which was the key, because, I don't know. I think we do this sometimes, all the time, because we get so caught up in ourselves, where I'm like, I wanted my wife to cut my hair, and I kept asking her, but I didn't do anything, about it. Like, hey, you got to cut my hair, cut my hair. She's like, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. And then the minute that I actually take the effort to get the clippers and put a chair outside and, get the extension cord so she can do it on, and then within 5 minutes, my hair is cut. So really, I guess maybe I'm just a dick. I don't know.
How does that work the other way in your house?
What exactly do you mean?
If she asks you to do something, how long does it take you to do it?
For fucking ever. I'm the worst. And she is, I think maybe her patience is yeah. The level of patience that she has must be insane. And I'm trying to be better at it, but because I used to just blow everything off, and now I get everything done within a week. I don't know. So yeah, no, I'm personally horrible about getting things done. And so perhaps I separate, like, for her, because she's such a good person, like, her requests are not like, take care of me, take care of me, take care of me. They're like, can you fix that thing that's broken on the house? I'd really appreciate it. And then, right? Like, my requests are not like, hey, can you budget out our finances for the whole year coming and give me, because I think that would be great for us. I don't ever ask anything like that. I'm like, will you cut my hair? Will you help me decorate my this or whatever? Right? It's all about me sometimes. And her requests for me are, okay, this is what I'm doing after we're done podcasting. So, during the quarantine, we were doing some redecorating in the house, and we put a backsplash in our kitchen, something that we're not very good at, and we're still working on, but it's turned out okay. But all the outlets in the kitchen are still, I don't have the covers on them where the black splash is, because you have to put these little spacers. It's going to take you can't just throw the new ones back on. You have to put some effort into it. And she's been bugging me about getting them done for a while. And then yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, she's doing dishes, and she turns on the garbage disposal, and because the cover's not in there, a little bit of water goes down her finger and makes a connection, and she gets a shock. Not a bad one. But then she's like, okay, this is where I become an asshole because you haven't done what you should have done a number of days ago. So
Yeah.
after this, I'm going to be putting the outlet covers back on upstairs.
Smart.
How does it work in your house? Can you relate to that at all?
Sure. Yeah, kind of. So let me give you a prime example.
Okay.
So we have a deck in the back of our house, and it's old, and the wood's starting to go on it. And we're planning on getting a new deck in the next year or two. Last summer, I painted the whole deck.
Okay. Do you paint it or stain it?
It's a paint stain
Yep.
hybrid.
Okay. Gotcha. I know exactly what you mean.
So I sanded down all the spots where the paint was bad and then painted.
Right.
And it looked really good. My wife was really happy with that.
And this is a somewhat temporary solution. Then the next year or two, you're gonna.
Last year it was great. It looked really good.
Right.
The problem is that we had snow this winter, and I decided not to shovel off the deck. So the places where the new paint was, it was fine. The paint
Right.
was this paint / stain was great. The downside was there. The place where the old paint was underneath the new paint, because I sanded down like the bad spots, but I didn't sand all of it down. The old paint is now bad and started bubbling up. So now our deck, the paint came off just about everywhere.
Okay. So you painted the whole thing, but you only fixed the parts before you. I got it.
Yeah. So like if the paint was okay on the boards of the deck, I didn't
sure.
sand down the whole thing down to the wood, right? I just sanded it on the edges so that if the paint was coming up, it wouldn't come up.
Okay.
So, and we had discussed that we were going to get a new deck, and it was just like a temporary deal.
Right.
So this year, now the paint looks bad on the deck. So around March, my wife was like, "Hey, what do you want to do about the deck?" And I'm like, "Well, we're just getting a new deck, aren't we?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Great," because I hate sanding the deck. And she was like, "Great." She's like, "Do you mind just spotting up the spots around the walkway? Because like on one end are the stairs that come up into the house, and then like the rest of the deck goes off to a sliding glass door on the side."
Very simple. Can I just interject and ask? That's a pretty simple request.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was a really fair thing.
Right.
She was like, "Hey, do you mind spot painting that stuff? It looked really good last time." I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that. No problem at all." So I sanded down the spots by the door. We talked about like what specifically she wanted to make sure it was how she wanted it. Okay. And keep in mind, this is my house too, and I get like this kind of maintenance stuff. I usually do that kind of maintenance,
right?
Like the outdoor stuff and all that. So I sanded down the parts that needed it and spot painted those. And it took, a few hours to get everything sanded down right. And I had to go get new paint because our old can of paint was not good anymore. So I had to go to Lowe's, and this is all during quarantine. So I'm like masked up and in Lowe's getting paint.
Right.
Which is probably not essential, but let's keep judgment out of this.
Yeah, no, because I'd have to judge myself a lot on that. Okay.
Right. So I did that. And got the paint and stained it up, and it looked really good. And she came home, and I got the first part done, and she's like, "Wow, this looks really good where the new paint is. Can you just do the rest of the boards now? Because it stands out where the new paint is." I'm like, "Yeah, well, if it's gonna fade, and when it fades, it'll blend in a little better." It's like, "Yeah, but it will look a lot better if you just paint those boards." I'm like, fine. So, I've spent 4 hours on it, but it's all sanded down. So, I'll just put more paint over the top of it. So I did. I put the paint over the top. And so I have to do it in 2 sections. So I did the first half, and then she told me to redo the first half. So I redid the first half before I even got to the second half. And then for the second half, I just painted everything. I just redid everything. So afterwards, it looked fantastic. Everything looked great. The paint looked really good. Everything looked nice and fresh and clean. And then we had family over for Memorial Day.
Okay.
And my in-laws and my wife's grandma are over. And we're sitting on the porch, and my father-in-law there's one rotten spot in one board on the far side of the porch that nobody goes to. And it's, there's a rotten spot in the wood, and it's fine. Like,
right.
Whatever. We're replacing it anyway in a couple of years. It's nobody's falling through or anything. But my father-in-law loses his shit. He brings it up all the time. He's like, "Oh, that rotten board, I can just help you. We can just tear it up and replace it or whatever." And my wife doesn't want to do that because she knows, rightly, that me and her dad will fuck that up. And it's going to cause like massive problems. It will be a disaster. And she's right. That's more than likely the outcome there, is that we end up screwing something up, and then we can't use our deck for the whole summer. And she's
Right.
like, absolutely not. You guys are not replacing that board.
Very wise on her.
Yeah. And I'm like, cool, because to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really want to replace the board either. We're going to replace the deck in a couple years. What is the point? So my wife, flash forward to Memorial Day, everybody's over, and we're sitting on the deck, and my father-in-law looks down and mentions a spot again, and he moves our table to go over to protect everyone from falling through our deck on the rotten spot. So because of this, my grandmother-in-law refuses to go to that end of the deck and has to sit on the other end of the deck. And while she's sitting there, she says she's 93 years old, by the way. She says several times how nice the one part of the deck that's painted looks to my wife. So I think you see where this is going, right?
No, I don't want. I just want. I'm not trying to think about it. I want to get to the destination.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so after they leave, my wife says, "What do you want to do about that spot in the wood?" And I'm like, I mean, we could just leave it. It's going to be fine. She's like, yeah, but my dad's not going to stop talking about it. I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. And I'm 100% behind doing something. So I'm like, why don't I get some wood putty and I'll just fill it in? She's like, great. That sounds like a fantastic idea.
Mm-hmm.
While you're doing that, why don't you sand down the rest of the deck and paint it? And I'm like, you got it, dear. Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic idea. So my nice, simple little spot painting, little spots here and there on the walkway of the deck has now turned into me having to go outside and sand down all of our deck and then paint it all. So yesterday I went to Lowe's and in fact, I ordered online some wood putty for pickup, drove over to Lowe's, got it, came back home, put the wood putty in, and so I'm sanding out the hole, right, to try to because you got to sand all the rotted wood out or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I'm sanding it out, and it just keeps going and going and going, and finally I dug straight through the board, like all the way through. And the board's strong. The board is fine. It's just like a hole that's like this big,
right,
in the middle of the thing, and now it's going all the way through. So I'm like, great. So I go down to the basement and I find a piece of wood and I cut it down and measure and cut and make a piece of filler wood that's not as big as the hole, so I can put it in and then put the putty on top of it. And I drilled the hole in each side of the wood and then fixed it in there so it wouldn't move, and then puttied over the top of it and got the wood putty in there, and it dried. And then I took care of another hole that was medium bad, but I had all the supplies, so I figured I might as well do it. Got it all worked up, and now today, after this podcast, I'm going outside and I'm going to start sanding down my deck, so that then I can paint it. All of it. It's not a small deck. It's 8 by 30.
Jeez, that's not small at all.
No.
Can I ask? So it started off in the beginning of March as just quick fix. We're going to replace it in 2 years.
Let's just paint. We'll just cover up the little paint spots here and there.
Can I ask, because I don't know a lot about this stuff? We're going to do our deck again this year, but we just power wash it and then stain it. Is your wood so bad that why do you have to sand it before you?
Well, I don't have a power washer, first of all.
Okay.
And second of all, yeah, I'm scared that if we power washed it, it would just take a lot of the wood would just come up.
Okay, so some of the wood's, it's probably several decades old.
Yeah. No, at least 20 years.
Oh, okay.
And our house is also old lumber.
Right.
So I'd be worried that it would do some damage to we're getting new doors and stuff, and the door jams and that kind of thing are all pretty bad too. And they're going to be replaced sooner than later, but probably when we do the deck, we're going to do the doors and the windows too. That's sort of the plan for fall/spring next year. But I'd be worried that it would take some of the paint off the house, or it would, 100 other things. So it wouldn't be worth it. It's going to be a lot easier for me to sand this than have power wash and then have to sand everything else too.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm lucky in my house because my wife likes to do a lot of that stuff herself. A lot of, I don't know what you would say, traditional guy stuff around the house, but she just likes to do that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
fix things and paint and fix all that kind of stuff she likes to do.
Right. Full disclosure, I like doing it too.
Right. I know
I don't
that's
have
kind
a
of your,
problem.
right.
It's just like when you get your head set on what the job's going to look like, and then you go to do the job and you get the job done, and then all of a sudden, like the goalposts keep moving on you. It's like,
Yeah, sure.
right.
And when somebody adds in a little, it's all fine and dandy until extended family comment,
and start saying stuff like, this looked really good. This part that you fixed over here, and it's.
I like that your 92-year-old grandmother-in-law wouldn't go to that side of the deck. Was that probably the straw that broke the camel's back?
No, so that didn't really change anything, that she didn't want to go to the other side of the deck, except for she sat on the side that had been done, and that's why she.
Oh, that's right. It looked so good.
Yeah.
Is it brutally hot where you are right now? Because it is down here.
Yeah, it's stupid humid. It's like 85, but it feels way hotter.
Is your deck in the sun or the shade?
Both. There's a big tree over it, so it's like half shady and half sunny.
All right.
When I'm out there sanding in a little bit, it's going to be very hot.
It's going to be really bad.
Yeah.
Before we started podcasting, we do this all the time. You and I chat for a little bit before we get going. So I said to you something, and then you called me out on something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. What kind of computer are you using?
Well, I'm using an Apple iMac desktop.
Yeah. And how long have you had that computer?
It's 2 years. Close to 2 years.
It's bizarre because I seem to remember for a very long period of time when I was using Mac that you constantly would give me shit about that. So it's just funny to me that now you're using a Apple computer after shitting all over me for using an Apple computer for a very long time.
Did I shit on you for your computer too, and not just your phone?
Yeah, dude.
I did?
See, yes. Every time it came up, without fail. I mean, that includes any time I got my phone out. You constantly told me how awful that is. So is there a particular reason why you feel like you have any right in the world to be using a Macintosh?
Well, I could come up with excuses, but I don't know how valid they would be.
Because you just determined that it's actually better product. That's why. Okay.
No, not really.
Oh. So why then? Why are you using it?
Okay, well, first of all, and I have, you know what? I have an iPad too.
So was it given to you for free?
Nope, I purchased both of them.
Were they less expensive than the competitor's product that you would support?
Okay, this is going to sound like a bullshit excuse as to why I have this Macintosh computer. But I work at U of M, you know that, University of Michigan, and they have a computer store there, and you can purchase something, put 10% down, and then for the next year they'll just take it out of your check.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's a really nice deal. It's also a dangerous deal for somebody like me.
Yeah.
Who has an issue buying technology. So they didn't. Well, you know what? That's a lie. Actually, they had a lot. I wanted to. I wanted to buy a machine that could handle editing.
Video. Right. Yeah. No. Okay, that makes sense.
Right, and they didn't offer a desk. They had a laptop that was kind of okay at it, but this is, to me, seemed the only reasonable machine to buy in that format that would satisfy what I needed to do.
So it's the only one that could sufficiently do the job that you needed to be done.
That was available to purchase.
Oh yeah, like the only thing that you could buy that would do what you needed it to do.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Cool. Good.
I mean, I could do that. All right, damn it. My son, when I bought my son his gaming computer a couple of years ago, and well, it's been upgraded, so it's not like a really hefty machine like the one that I just built for my daughter. But at the time, 2 or 3 years ago, it was a pretty good machine. It can do VR, so if it can handle the HTC Vive, it's pretty good. And originally we shared that computer. It was just the one computer. He would play games on it. I would edit video. And even I just didn't like how that Windows handled the video editing software.
Yeah, not nearly as good as that Mac you're using.
Maybe. Okay, so the Mac does a lot better job at. They all have their strengths and weaknesses.
Oh yeah, and the strengths outweigh the weaknesses.
Even video editing. There's certain things that the Windows machine does better than this one, but this one, well, okay, this one actually does it a lot better. There's certain things that this one can't handle that the high end machine could. So, but I have tried to be. I know you're absolutely right. I used to give everybody shit about using an iPhone, and I'm still Android, probably for life on my phones. But it's
how much better the integration is for an iPhone to a Mac.
Well, see, I try to move away from. I have tried over the last few years. I've done some technology writing, freelancing, and things like that, and so I have tried to be on this path because I'm so into technology that I try to be platform agnostic now. And so, even though I stay with Android, like I switch manufacturers every 2 years. I try not to, and so I felt like 2 years before I bought this Mac, that I would have never bought one. And then I got to the point like, well, you know what? I think this one is going to do the job that I want it to do. So that's no excuse for all the shit that I've given you over the years about it. And there's still, okay, to be fair, this conversation started before we recorded because I was complaining about, I was like, the one thing I don't like about my Mac is the way it handles audio and how I can record audio. And that's when you were like, you have a Macintosh computer? Do you think less of me?
No, Mike.
You should. No, I'm just kidding. Is there a point in your married life where you realize you didn't know much of anything?
In my married life?
Well, so, yeah. In other words, it's taken me a bit of time in my life, in my relationship with my wife, really is what I'm talking about, to realize that I'm not an expert in everything and to not front like I'm an expert in everything. And I continue to try to do that sometimes. And it's so hard to catch myself.
Dude, I learned at a very young age that I know enough to know that I don't know shit. I don't know. There are very few things that I'm an expert in. And in those things, the only people I would talk to about it probably know as much, if not more than me. Anything I know enough to know that I'm not an expert in. And if I am an expert, then I only talk to other experts about it. So there's no, I just assume that, in fact, if I'm in a room, this is something that I try to live by. If I'm in a room where I think I'm the smartest person in the room, I want to leave that room because it's useless for me to sit in a room and know more than everyone else I'm talking to because I get annoyed.
Right.
They get annoyed because I just sit there and roll my eyes when they open their dumb mouths. And I don't learn anything. So the whole thing is just terrible. So I try not to be surrounded by people who are dumber than me. And to be honest with you, that's rare. That there's almost, I've never met anybody who didn't know something more about something than I do.
Okay.
The trick is trying to find that thing for some people.
Okay. So in theory, if you're in a room with a bunch of people that are dumber than you, your default is not like, hey, I'm going to share some of my wisdom. It's more like, fuck these stupid people.
No, because they don't want to hear my wisdom.
Yeah, that's true.
Nobody wants to hear what the fuck I have to say. They want me to shut up. Nobody wants to fucking listen to me drone on about some shit. And I don't want to. And No, and it's rare. Sometimes if I'm going to share information, it's an exchange,
Right.
right? Like I'm talking to somebody like you who knows way more about some stuff than I do, and then I know stuff about other stuff, and we either have different opinions where we
Mm-hmm.
get new information from the other one's point of view,
Right.
or we exchange informations where I talk to you about something, and then you tell me about something else, and then we go back and forth on it. It doesn't make sense to spend time with people who are not
No.
who can't, and it sounds shitty, but can't bring something to the table.
I mean, I think I get that. Um, when it comes to like, but when it comes to interactions with people that you have relationships, whether coworkers or family and stuff like that,
Yeah.
um, you don't have to find that you have to guard yourself against mansplaining things at all. Or here's the problem that I face sometimes.
No, dude, I learned a long time ago not to.
Okay, I think it's because like my job when I'm actually working and I'm not furloughed, I manage 40 adults, cooks, our professional staff, cooks, all that kind of stuff, and I manage 200 students, right? And so that's a different mentality in that situation when you're in that position and you're being a manager.
Yeah.
And so my wife finally figured it out a few months ago, and she'll say this to me to check me, and she'll be like, "Stop being a manager. You're at home." And that's right. I'll go into sometimes at home. I'll go into manager speak because where I have no right to, by the way. I don't know. Maybe this podcast is where Mike reveals all his shitty habits and stuff. But in a situation where I have no right to be act like I'm an authority, but when I'm at work, I am an authority because I've spent my whole career learning all these things about food,
Right.
food safety, and managing and moving projects forward. And so, but when I get home, and so not only that, but when I'm at work, that's just a small part of my managing because I work collaboratively. Because I work with such brilliant students, I work collaboratively with them. They come up with the great ideas. Sometimes I just provide the path for them
Yeah.
to navigate it. So, but when I come home, I only bring back, sometimes when I'm at home, the only thing that I bring back from work is trying to act like a manager at the house. And that never goes over very well.
No, you need to not do that anymore.
Well, I don't do it too often.
I
But
learned very early in my marriage for sure that it doesn't do any good to try to, like, even if my wife isn't necessarily accurate. Sometimes I just let it go. Maybe her way works.
yeah,
If it doesn't, then I have another way also that might work instead.
hey, I do have one question that's totally random. Are you like in our state right now? Certain zones are opening back up, and so are you really? You're not in zone 1 that reopened, are you? In Ludington, how close are you geographically to that?
The other side of our county.
It just
Yeah.
seems so funny to me.
Yeah, like so we live on US 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know it well.
The joke is that north of US 10 we can open. We live on the south side of the street. It's not entirely accurate. It was
But
kind
it's
of
a pretty
like
close line,
one of the markers, but it's like 20 minutes north of town.
right? Because 10's a pretty. You couldn't actually use that through your area, that highway, because it's just splits the town, kind of, right?
Yeah, right. It'd be ridiculous if they used 10. But yeah,
But it probably parallels it like 20 miles north or something like that, right?
yeah.
So if you wanted to go to a restaurant, you could just drive a half an hour north.
Yeah, half the rest, like, we go to the restaurants up there. Like we haven't yet, but those are like before all this happened, when we would go out to eat, that was like options. Some of our options are open.
Right. All right. Well, that's good, right?
Yeah. I mean, we haven't gone, but
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
But that seems pretty funny to me. I just was curious because I had a feeling like, plus, Traverse City is a much bigger city than your city, and yet that's open. You're not open. Whatever.
It doesn't make any sense at all. But so what we've decided to do is get takeout from the restaurants right around us. like the closer restaurants that are still closed, because we
Uh-huh.
want to try to support them so they will open up eventually.
Right. Hey, so a bit of background because Rob and I have worked together in a couple different restaurants. One of them was the Earl in Ann Arbor, and so, dude, they're they're now selling the Earl bread loaves. You know, because how?
Yeah, dude.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, yes, it's the
Um,
best bread in the world, or close to it.
I think we're coming down Friday just to see my mom. Then we're coming down Friday night and heading back Saturday morning.
Uh huh.
And I think we're gonna get the takeout from the Earl.
Yeah, we haven't done it yet. We got to do it.
Yeah, I think we're doing it Friday night.
Yeah, and then you can buy an extra loaf of bread and take it back home with you.
Yes. May
Oh, you know what
actually.
I do want to talk to you about actually is um, one of the albums that you posted is Gentleman by Afghan Whigs.
Yes.
And I have like, you need to tell me about what that album means to you, if you can, if you want to. I have a very deep, long, complicated relationship with that album. I love that album. It's probably still to this day my uh, Desert Island album, if you can only have one album to listen to.
It's up there for sure.
Yeah.
So, what do you mean by what it means to me? Like
Well,
personally?
so yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of the whatever that meme is on Facebook. 10 albums that meant a lot to
Oh,
you,
yeah,
right?
that all altered your perception of music
Right.
or whatever, however they said it, which is probably more elegant than me. So, that album signifies for me permission to look to music that isn't necessarily the popular music at the time.
Okay.
It signifies a movement away from the popular music at the time.
Hmm.
So at the time I was like, I don't know, 13, 14, something like that.
Okay.
And I was moving into, and I started, and I had gotten into grunge early
Hmm.
as a kid though, like 10, 11,
Right.
listening to like um, college radio
Right.
when I was falling asleep at night
Okay.
and not having any idea what I was listening to and,
Right.
hearing music or whatever. And then that got me like listening for alternative music.
Right.
And so then Pearl Jam and Nirvana happened, and so I got into that and Smashing Pumpkins and Blind Melon, Stone Temple Pilots,
Right.
you know,
Hmm.
Alice in Chains, like the big hitters that had like videos and MTV and the whole thing.
Right.
And I was hanging out with my buddy, and he had an older brother, and we were playing pool in his basement,
Hmm.
poorly because we were young. And his brother just put on that album, and it blew my mind because it was as good musically as some of those other artists, but it wasn't something that like you would hear on the radio.
Right.
And maybe you hear a little bit of it here or there.
Yeah. No. So,
Big deal. When I heard it, I got excited.
right. Yeah. Afghan Wigs fall in that same category as the Replacements, Dinosaur Jr. Um, maybe the Pixies a little bit, although, but they're a little more popular. But really, that next tier of sort of that underground alternative music that
Yeah.
probably didn't make any sense why it wasn't being played on the radio.
Right.
But if that was your scene, you knew about them
Yeah.
definitely.
And right. Like it was they were one of those bands where it made you like, people knew you knew something if you knew them, right?
Right.
It was like, it was sort of like the Key, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's kind of what that album meant for me, is like that represented me moving into like really building my own taste of music. And that album in particular had a lot to do with that.
Right. Um, there's album means a lot to me, but Afghan Wigs always brings back, has a certain memory for me where, and I'm going to explain this, where I saw my first boob in the wild.
Nice.
So do you remember 89X in Windsor used to put on, what did they call it? It was an annual show in the summer on top of some parking structure in Pontiac.
I can picture the parking structure because it's across the street from that little corner where all those bars are.
Right, and if you ever, and it's where you would go if you ever went to.
I want to say Summer Jam, but I know it's not
It
that.
was in Pontiac
Yeah.
because it's the same area that you would park if you're going to go see a Lions game and have to take the bus
Yeah.
to the Lions game. So so we were going to that one year. They're playing,
Summer Fling?
huh?
Summer Fling? Summer, I forget what it's called.
God,
Are you looking it up?
yeah, I don't know if I can find it though.
Whatever. It's fine.
I know it was okay. Anyway, it was a huge deal. It was a birthday bash. It was the 89X birthday bash. That's what it was. And then they did it for a number of years. And Afghan Whigs were headlining one show one year, and so that's why we went. Anyway, we got out of my car, whatever car we were in, we parked, and we're walking towards the thing, and then like literally the car that we're next to, just is people with all their clothes off, right in the broad daylight, just going at it.
Nice.
So, I think that was my first boob I saw in the wild.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
now I want to go through all of my albums and talk about them.
okay, we can start doing that.
So there were some very specific ones that I put on there for very specific reasons.
Uh-huh.
And there's one in particular that I want to put on there and I forgot about until afterwards. So Oasis. What's the Story, Morning Glory? Are you familiar with that album?
Well, yeah, you have no choice but to be familiar with that album.
So that album is amazing because it's, first of all, it's a really good spring album. Put it on March or April.
Okay.
And it's the perfect tone for that. But it also represents like a specific time in life where I was a little younger than this when it came out, but it's like that time in life when you're becoming an adult and you're just realizing you start to really come to grips with the reality that you're the one responsible for everything that's going on. Like you make all the choices, but you also have all the freedoms. And that's kind of where I was at with that album.
Okay.
I could start to I didn't have to be under anyone's, my parents didn't really make the decisions.
Interesting. That's really interesting. See, because I'll go back to if I were to have not been lazy and actually do the top 10, I mean, Gentleman would obviously have been on there for me too. But for me, like right now, like you're 40 and I'm 51 or something like that. But we're basically a decade apart, which at this point in our lives doesn't mean anything. But for me,
you hated that album, I would imagine.
What's that?
You didn't like that album, I would imagine.
That album? Oh, no. I mean, I got sick of Oasis real quick. And they're, yeah. It was one of those band songs that I didn't listen to the whole album. All the songs that were on the radio were played way too many times. Yeah. And then one of them said they're better than the Beatles. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have time for you. So.
It's hard, yeah. And it's funny coming from a different spot because I didn't.
Right. Because for me, like an album that was sort of due for you when your friend played it, of course, like now my situation would have been different. I grew up in a Christian conservative family, and it wasn't until later on in life that we were able to kind of listen to pop music, So, so the album that actually did it for me is probably Voices by Hall & Oates. I think, whatever one has Kisses on my list, I think that's on Voices. Just because, like Hall & Oates represented for me, like it doesn't fall into my musical taste that much at all now. I mean, I still love them, but that was the band that was like the first like non-Christian band that I listened to, and so that was huge for me. Gentleman by Afghan Whigs, I was like, what sucked me into that album was one musically is just great. But just sort of his complex wrestling with relationships on that album and sort of how tortured he is by all of it.
And it's just a masterpiece.
Yeah. It's like, that just really spoke to me. So, which I'm sure it probably did later on in life when you went back to listen to it again.
Yeah.
When you listen to it is lyrically, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's dark. And
It's dark as hell.
yeah, and
but it's beautifully dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, have you listened to The Twilight Singers, which is...
Yeah.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
that shit continues to be really good.
Yeah.
The stuff that Greg Dull puts out. Greg Dully. Yeah.
Although we did a cover of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas that's absolute trash.
They were at... they played in Detroit at St. Andrews last year, I think.
Yeah.
And I was going to go, but the tickets were so ridiculous.
Yeah. I
like
also,
much more than like it was like the year before that I saw Dinosaur.
You would pay to see anybody at St. Andrews.
What's that?
Like more than you would expect to pay to see anybody at St. Andrews.
Right. Like the year before that I saw Dinosaur Jr. at St. Andrews.
Yeah.
And maybe one of the greatest experiences of my life. But it wasn't like tickets were like $20-$30 or something.
Yeah. This was like 80.
It was 80, and then you could pay a little bit extra, or a lot extra to meet. Then you could pay part of the package was you could pay like $500 to meet the band.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, fuck off! I don't.
Or I stand out back when they have their smoke break before they go on for set. I mean,
yeah, just fuck that.
Agreed.
But he continues to make great music. So
yeah.
As does, are you into Dinosaur Jr. at all or not? Probably not.
Honestly, I'm more into Dinosaur Jr. because I know you're into Dinosaur Jr.
Okay,
and that's why I played a lot of their stuff, and I like it. But I don't have the same. It doesn't have the same sentimental hook that I like.
Yeah,
I listen to it and I enjoy it and I see value in it. And there's a few songs that I've thrown on my playlist or whatever.
Right.
It's but it for whatever reason it missed me at the time.
Yeah, it was super meaningful to me in my 20s.
Yeah. Which
would have been your teens and.
Yeah. And I was busy listening to Afghan Whigs and Hum.
Yeah.
So there are a couple other good albums. So some of them have good stories. So I put Diggable Planets Blowout Comb on there because I think that's a phenomenal album that really got me into hip hop in general, but more specifically a little more bluesy, artistic form of hip hop than I was used to. It was definitely different than Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, or even the Cypress Hills or the whatever I was listening to, where it had a little more. It was a little more artistic, I guess.
Sure.
That album is fantastic. Then there's Bone Thugs and Harmony, East 99 Eternal.
I'm looking at your Facebook page right now.
Yeah, which that is just very specific and personal reason that's on there. So when all my friends were listening to Bone at that particular time and so I went to the store to get my Bone CD because everybody else had it and I wanted to be cool.
All right.
And I happened to get it. I went in to pick it up the same day the new Bone album came out. And I decided to buy the old one instead of the new one because the old one was the one that everybody had.
Right.
And the next day it was the new one that I should have bought. So that album is awesome. And I actually like it a little better than the next one that came out, although they're both really good. But that's a reminder to me that to not follow the trend, instead to try to search out new music. Mm-hmm. And then I'm trying to think what else is on there. The December's album is really good, but that's because it hit me at a certain time, in a certain place, in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Dark Was a Night opened me up to a whole bunch of new stuff that it was just band after band that was amazing, that got me falling down the rabbit hole to discover a whole new section. It's almost like that second wave of alt music from the last 10 years. The Bon Iver album is stupid good. Just because it's amazing. I mean, that dude is
right. Talented. Sometimes an album has to be on there just because.
It has to be on there because I can listen to it anytime at any place. So one of the albums that didn't make it is 9 Inch Nails' Fixed.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that album?
Fixed. Let me see what songs are on there. No, I don't know if I know that particular album.
So Broken is the album that came out between Pretty Hate Machine and Downward Spiral.
Okay.
So Pretty Hate Machine, Trent pretty much established himself as an artist, right? And
Right.
that's where like, Head Like a Hole and all that. So then he put out Broken, which is a sophomore album that kind of had a sophomore slump. I really enjoy that album,
Mm-hmm.
but Fixed is the remix album of Broken.
Okay.
And it was terribly difficult to find at the time. So that was the first album that I actually had to go on a hunt for and search for and find, which also started off my need to do like that hunt thing that I think we talked about in the last podcast.
Right.
It's really the first thing where I put it on a list and then had to go find it in the wild that I did. That and a 1914 Chicago Cubs away hat.
Mm-hmm.
That before the internet was, you had to like travel to find. So like it's really important to me because it really represented the work that you had to put in to find good music.
Right. Like that, the replacements are that way for me. I think Paul Wurstenberg is one of the great songwriters of all time. But beyond that, I think it was really at the end of high school. It was in high school that I was really getting into the replacements. And I think in our senior year, Pleased to Meet Me came out. And like, but the only way you would know that at that time is by reading indie magazines. And then when the album came out, we had to drive from Holland to Grand Rapids to a little independent record store just because there was no way I could buy that in Holland just to get that freaking album. And it's not, Please Meet Me is not their best album, but so it still has that kind of meaning because there was, when I got into replacements, all my friends had the albums, so you just make a tape. And that was the album that I had, that I was really like, holy shit, this band is good. I can't wait for the next album to come out. So.
Yeah, I had to get on a bus as a kid and ride downtown Ann Arbor, where I would hang out with the local. There was like a set of kids that just hung out downtown and like got into trouble and did things they probably shouldn't have. Like get bums to buy us 40s underage and like drink them back behind Nichols Arcade. But I had to get on the bus and go down there and we would go to, and went to the record store and bought that album. And it was like a whole thing to get down there to do that.
What I think is funny about that is, because I was in Ann Arbor in my 20s, it cracks me up to think that, because, that at some point you could have just been one of those punk ass teenagers hanging around in Ann Arbor that annoyed the hell out of me.
I'm sure I was. I guarantee
it too. That's hilarious.
Throw empty 40 bottles on you while you're walking down State Street?
No. Okay. I would have been the dude that you could have just been like, I would have bought you that 40 ouncer for sure.
You may very well have.
You never know.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I'm glad that you've listened. Because I was going to ask you if you'd listened to the Twilight Singers. So.
Yeah, dude.
All right. I have Fixed queued up here, so I'm going to listen to it afterwards.
So that music on the album in particular is like, okay. It's Trent Reznor doing Trent Reznor stuff. What you should do is listen to Hum, though.
Okay. Why don't we let's pick 10 songs that the other person has to listen to for next time.
Yes.
Okay. And here's the theme. Like, what made me think about this is on one of the, I think Dinosaur Jr. has put out 4 albums. They have another one coming out soon, actually. So
they only have 4 albums?
No, 4 new albums. They reformed when they have a long history. The first few albums the band was together, and then the middle chunk of their career was just Jay Mascis making all the albums and playing all the instruments. And then they finally got back together 10 years ago, 12 years, something like that. And although their early collection is classic, I think some of the music that they've made when the band themselves are in their 40s, their age-wise, is some of their best music, which might be heresy because of all their older stuff. So
it's, you're in a different place.
Right. So the reason I say that is so what made me think of this idea of listening to these top 10 songs, and here's what the theme should be. Like, there's a song on there that I think, in one of those albums, that I think might be the greatest rock song that's ever been written. But how biased is that? So I'm gonna put that on my list.
Okay.
So make sure that like I'm gonna put things on there that you will either validate my beliefs or shoot them down horrifically.
Okay.
All right. So that's what we're gonna do for next time. All right.
Yep.
All right, man. Well, listen. Have a great day. Enjoy sanding and painting your porch and being a hero to all of us, or at least your family.
Take it easy, man.
All right. Take care, Rob.